right?
Actually assigned anyone. We'll do that, I think, on Monday or Tuesday, whatever day we're meeting.
Tomorrow?
Wasn't it? No,
Today's Monday.
no, but next week, I mean,
Oh,
we don't have a meeting today, we have a meeting next week. And it's MLK Day, isn't it, on Monday?
oh, you guys meet on Mondays?
We meet on Mondays usually,
I didn't-
the third Monday.
How many?
Well,
times
this will
a
be
week
the
do you
first
meet?
one without Mike, huh?
Yeah.
Bob.
Well, we have one regular scheduled and then we have an alternate available
Per month,
per month, yeah.
How often do you guys meet?
every Tuesday and then usually most Thursdays.
You guys are paid also.
A little bit.
I've got two other jobs I'm doing.
Well, this one's enough for me.
It was up until 1:30 last night programming, so I'm a little bit bleary eyed at the moment. So I had a major breakthrough, but I was just coding away and.
I don't think I.
At 1:30, I finally decided to try to sleep.
Ready to start there, boss?
It was a heat lamps on us.
Turn that.
What was that?
There's one of the switch this, I think
This one that's on.
no, it's down below. Try that one.
This is all.
Well,
Oh,
not necessarily.
there you go. Oh, okay.
There you go.
Whenever you're ready, boss.
Hmm.
You ready?
Okay. Do we have a quorum? 1, 2 from Oregon. And 3, 4, 5, we got it.
Looks good.
Okay. All right, hope everybody had a great Christmas and New Year's, hopefully much better than mine. We had the flu and the cold and sneezing and whatnot, but we're over it now. Come here, Arthur.
No kisses.
Okay, so let's get going. Mike?
All right, welcome everyone, and we've got a lot of things on the agenda tonight, so I'm gonna try to keep us on track with time. So we'll try to get through things quickly and cover what we need to cover, but also try to stay on schedule too. So approval of minutes from the 12/12.
I had no comment on them. I thought they were fine.
Yep.
Are you guys, so we got
That's good.
one, you okay?
Yep.
How about you folks? Good?
That was
Catherine?
good. Mhm.
Okay, so they're good.
No objection.
Thank you. Review of previous action items. The first item, the biological opinion, we do have ODOT joining us at 3. So I'd like to kind of hold that until 3 o'clock and then we can go over that with them. We have just real quick, we did have some conversations with them. They have some new information on a recent project that has caused them to relook at some of the information provided on our project due to some outcomes of an existing job in Abernathy. We've met with them once, we've met internally with our group to kind of look at an option of redoing some of the information of ours. And we're meeting again with them this Friday to run that by them, and make sure that we have everything that they're looking for and to make sure we're gonna prepare it the right way. Ideally, in summary of what that was basically increasing the factor of safety for the work bridges and the temporary work in building our project. They had piling that was undersized on one of their previous projects, and because of a new oscillating crane that the contractor has brought into the area, the torque generated by that crane basically overpowered the piling that was assumed. And because they needed bigger footprints, that increased the impacts underneath it. So NIMS and NOAA do not like when you increase those impacts. So they wanted us to go ahead and go back and look at ours and do a reasonable worst case scenario and increase our sizes. We had assumed 24-inch and some other ones, but we wanted to increase that, increase the amount of work bridge, increase the amount of large assumptions, so that if we did anything, it will be a reduction rather than an increase. So we're working through that process right now, and they'll be here to.
Yeah, so to add on to that, the conceptual design came up with 24 inches. That's with very little real hard numbers. So it's always the plan as you go through final design. You'll take a look at the piles, and if the piles have to be changed out, you change it out at that time. It sounds like what happened on Abernathy is that if they did do a revised pile design, they didn't take into consideration or didn't recognize when they issued the contract to actually drive the piles, the impact of this new piece of equipment. Okay, so the logical thing here is go ahead and we talked about it, go ahead and increase the allowance from 24 inches to maybe 28 inches in diameter. Put a paragraph in it that says, this is an allowance pure based on some experience with current driving technology. This will all get confirmed in the final design.
And one of the things that hit theirs was the delivery type being a design build and bid build for the other one. They were into construction when they found all this out. With ours, that's one of the other benefits of Progressive. Our contractor and designer will be in way before they start construction, so we'll get that confirmation early. If we have to make adjustments, we can do that long before they actually start into construction and stuff. But, and
That's the beauty of having the contractor on board with design.
So are you saying we actually have to run a bunch of numbers, or are you saying we just have to change a
We change a paragraph.
paragraph? in the
No,
document?
what we're proposing, we're gonna propose on Friday to ODOT is that we just do a memo to the VA that says, hey, based on blah, 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 we're making these changes, here's the changes, and we do it as an amendment to the existing VA. They could come back and they could say, well, we want you to redo whatever that list ends up being. We're gonna try to walk through it with them and avoid that. We don't want to go down that route. We don't think we need to, because we are upsizing something that was already kind of reviewed and wasn't an issue. It's due to them having a recent issue is why they're changing it. I don't know what they're gonna tell us, but we're trying
But
to
the
minimize
issue,
that.
and I would fight back on that, expect you to, that the real issue here is not the size of the pile. It's the equipment they're using to drive the
It's
pile.
more of a method. This, like, you're trying to assume the worst method that could be done to build this bridge. You just don't know, right? You're never gonna be 100% sure that there's not gonna be something different. Yeah.
So can you explain how important is the size of the pile to the overall impact, environmental impact of this? It seems like adding a couple of inches, it's hard to imagine that causing significant change in biological impact.
That is correct. It's not a huge impact. It's from, and I'm gonna summarize what I've heard, because this is not my background.
Right.
What we talked about in the meeting was it's the pounding of the pile and the noise generated from that. Pounding a 24 inch versus even a 36 inch is not that big.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons we think we can just do a memo to say, you know, here's the impact. It's not a significant impact enough to change really anything. But here's the increase of that and allow us to move forward without going back and doing a full analysis. But we'll just have to see how much. of a stickler
But the
they
key
are.
thing, we gotta keep pushing back on these guys, and as you said, these guys are not engineers.
Yeah.
Okay, we gotta keep plowing back into them, is that this whole thing right now is an allowance anyway.
Yeah, and I did.
And we think it's a reasonable allowance for this type of bridge and size and so on. But it's gonna get confirmed as we go through design.
And I did talk to the ODOT leader, Carol, who will be on the call at 3, that I don't want to put this back through like a full review, because there's a lot of people that have not been in this conversation of where we are. So just let's keep it to the group that is working on it, and what they need is not go back and bring 15 more people in and get 15 more opinions of people who have not been in any of these conversations. She agreed that we would try to keep that contained and that we would leave it to the group that's working on trying to just get through the video. So that should also help not get secondary conversations that.
The criticality of this, if they slide back to where they were initially talking that, hey, maybe you need to just wait and we'll do the EIS after you've gotten 60% design. Well, that right there, in my humble opinion,
Yeah,
will
that's not their
probably
call.
kill the job.
That's just not their call.
And I don't think they'll go there. And talking to, we talked to WSP this morning and asked them, I said, you know, look, I need some kind of a ballpark answer of what type of a delay are we talking about? They felt that it was probably a few, we're not talking months, so, I mean, I thought that was a good thing, at least that it wasn't, you know, months and months of delay.
Did
For us
we-
to get that back to.
Did we do a full sounding analysis? Because it sounds like it's the sound that's produced. So in the beginning, did we do a full sounding analysis and estimations and all that got put into there?
I would say that the people who developed our set of plans are comfortable with what they developed. What they're responding to is a new piece of equipment and things that ODOT has gone through that they're wanting us to do something different. Whether it's required or we feel like it was necessary, I would say if you asked our folks, they probably could have upsized it a little bit for the new piece of equipment because they didn't take that into account because it's something that wasn't even in the region to be used would be previously. But it's really just a reaction to ODOT trying to avoid having a change that has, I think, caused some conflict between them and NOAA and NIPS.
To answer your question about in the NEPA earlier process, so there's a bunch of best management practices for the number of strikes and putting in bubble curtains and all of those treatments have been identified.
And that was all based on, you know, we brought in contractors, there was a construction group that came in and they all sat down and said, yeah, we think this is an appropriate way to build a project. I did ask a question of ODOT that if we came back and our engineers said, hey, we're good with what we did, is that gonna be an acceptable answer? And the response I got back was, you need to find a different engineer if that's the answer you get. So I said, okay, well,
Yeah,
then we're gonna put a bigger.
so the other
factory.
alternative to this is that we put a disclaimer into the design that you can't use this new piece of equipment.
I mean, that's another alternative.
I mean,
right?
there's hundreds of,
And you just don't know. I mean, we talked to 20 contractors about this job and we got 20 different opinions on how they're gonna build this project. So that, and they understand that too. What they're really trying to do is they build a bigger footprint that gives you more flexibility. What I think they've done in the past is had it too tight. And somebody would make a modification and then you gotta go back to NOAA and NIMS and ask for something bigger. And they just do not like when you do that after the process.
Is WSP prepared with, do they have the staff expertise to do the, to make the argument on the acoustic impact of the larger pilings?
Yes, they do. And then we also brought in a different group of KMC folks, which are ex-contractors.
Right.
To just validate that. And that's where, so they came up and said, here's what we would modify. And then WSP's folks reviewed that and said, yeah, okay, we can agree with what you're proposing.
Right.
And that's what the memo is gonna be based on. It's kind of an independent peer review. Here's what we recommend change, that we agree with that change. Here's what we're recommending to go with now.
So basically, a bunch of people learn some new words and they want to apply them, and we're gonna smile and be nice and let them apply
It
them.
doesn't.
realizing
change
it-
our
it's
project.
not really
I got
impacting us.
Yeah, it doesn't really change our project. In some ways, it's good because it gives us more footprint. So it should just allow us a little more flexibility.
But I think the next step to this, if they agree with it, then we're gonna have to put together a trend that says this bigger pile is gonna cost this much more. And the project total cost just went up a bit. And then when we get the design done and we can bring the piles back down, we do a negative trend, pull it back out.
Yeah, and the folks who are writing the memo are gonna put together you know, here's the impact cost of providing this additional piling.
But right now, I
That's the
would
part of
get
the
real excited about the cost.
The cost is not part of the biological assessment, though.
No.
It is not. It's just more for us to know
Right.
what the potential impact could be.
Just.
Yeah.
Project management. Okay,
All right, sorry, so we weren't gonna spend a whole lot of time on that.
well, I wanted to have this discussion before they got on,
Yep,
so
so,
everybody gets up to speed.
I don't know, you know, they'll just fill us in kind of where they are, but, you know, I think now that Abernathy's done, we're the priority for them now. So I think we have at least set that this project is a priority and that we're wanting to move forward, so. I think that's what you're gonna hear.
It just reminds, where's Abernathy?
That's the I-205.
Yeah.
And
Thanks.
Oregon City, West Landry.
Oh, okay. Oh, that one. Okay, got it.
Yes, over the.
Yep.
Willamette.
Yep, yep.
All right, the appointees for the VSBC, we're gonna cover that one, so I'm gonna pull off as well as the CFA. We've got a section to talk about that. And the treaty, MOAs, I'll cover that too, so I'll cover those when we get down into the informational items. Okay. So the first item, Gorgeous Nights, it will be on the 7th and 8th in Olympia. And it's in your bridge update, that we do have, 3 meetings now, 4 meetings now. We've got Senator King, Senator Leas, Representative Barkus, and then we got one more today.
Mossberger.
Awesome.
We got Mossberger.
Yeah, that was the 4th one. So we have those 4 scheduled for the meeting.
Now, how does that work? Are we in kind of an auditorium someplace and they come in, or do we go to their offices? How does that work?
So Gorgeous Nights is set up really as an evening event. I don't know, Commissioner, if you've been there before.
It's usually underneath at the deep down inside the bowels.
Yeah, it's like some kind of like a mini rotunda. It might be right exact underneath the rotunda, actually. And there will probably be 20, 30 different groups bringing boards and marketing materials for their specific events. All the transit companies, for example, come and participate. And it's actually hosted by the legislator representing the region. So in Olympia, it'll be Mossberger, Corey, and King. There's giveaways and raffles and that sort of thing, but it's really a chance to kind of network, kind of mingle, talk about our project. And that's usually, I want to say about 5 o'clock, like 5 to 8 o'clock in the afternoon, evening. But the meetings that Michael's referencing is really an add-on that Boswell is scheduling for us to take advantage of the time.
So it's like we did in DC.
Correct. It's one-on-one. We're going to be in their offices, or whoever's going, will be in their offices. There'll be one-on-one meetings in the legislative buildings.
So, I will be meeting with Jen tomorrow to start talking about the material attendance, who's gonna be there, what materials are going to develop. So we'll be generating that, so you'll start seeing stuff come up about that. And review for materials and things like that from what we've done in the past. The Oregon side in Salem is February 15th. And they are still coordinating whether the second day of meetings will be the 14th or the 16th. So they have not locked that down yet. So once that gets locked down, same thing, we'll communicate that out to the group. So if you could send me an email if you want to go to one or both of those, so that we can get a list of attendees and we'll start including you on all the materials as we develop those.
Personally, I think would be good if we had reps from both sides of the river at both of them.
Yeah, and so that was actually a point that was made by the lobbyists, was that has gone over very well when we have done things and we have had representation for both sides. They have recognized that, and that has been something that has stood out with a lot of the elected officials.
So can everybody kind of figure out which one or both you'd like to go to and get it back over to Mike? When do you want it by?
If you can tell me if you're going by the end of this week, that way we can start including you in the development of the materials. But as soon as you possibly can, if you don't have other than the week, then just as soon as you can.
And whether you need hotel accommodations.
Yes.
Well, I would say that answer is yes. Otherwise, we're sleeping in the car.
Well, we have one extra room, so unless there's sun's out there, then we have 2. So.
I think there is a shuttle that after, at least from the one in Olympia, that after the event, there is a shuttle that brings a bunch of people back that evening from Olympia.
But that's a long ways to turn around and go back the next day.
Right. Absolutely. Unless you're coming in the night before.
Can you give us the timing
Mhm.
on both days?
Yeah, if you're interested in going, we'll put a whole packet together. Of
Send it to
timing
everybody.
and everything.
Send it to everybody.
So
Okay.
We have that. All right, do we have? I can see one is Paul. Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna hold off on the project delivery method then, and Steve on? Okay, I'm gonna hold off then, if they don't come on, we'll go back to that. So let's go down to the CFA, the project delivery method.
Yeah.
So let's wait and see, so I know Steve was planning to be on, so if we can give him a little bit to get on. The CFA. So primary place of business discussion, where's? Yeah, it's like people
That's-
missing somehow.
That's Catherine. So Catherine did a survey,
Primary place of business was the survey.
No, she did survey on the name.
yeah, on the name. I'm sorry, Catherine. So the survey, you've included it.
Yeah, it's in our packet.
Did everybody have a chance to go through it?
Yep.
Is there any strong opinion outside of the survey that people want to talk about? I think the survey basically said that the most economical place is Oregon. But that doesn't mean to say that we can't have an office over in Washington. It's just a place of business.
Somebody did text me and they said the Zoom meeting has not started.
So they're just sitting staring at us?
No, they're here.
Oh,
but there must be another.
The
link.
public?
January was supposed to be on and they're not on because they said the Zoom meeting hasn't started.
Mike, if I could just say that you have to go to the port's website, go to the Bi-State Working Group and click on that link. The link that is on people's calendars that you had sent out earlier does not work. So the link that does work is the one that's on the agenda on the port's website.
Is that how you all got on?
That's how I got on.
Yeah, it is. Normally I do the other thing, so that was total New Year's luck. But I see now that it is a different meeting ID on the Outlook calendar.
Why don't you, I can run and copy it from the agenda and send it out.
Resend it out, yeah.
Let me go ahead.
I've got it,
Sorry about
I've got,
that.
we all have the agenda right here. You just want the link?
Yeah, or if.
I'll just text this to you.
But you need to send it.
Well, I'll need to email it, so it'll just be
Okay,
quicker if I do
okay,
it from my desktop.
Give me just a second.
All right, so let's reshuffle then because we do have Mayor Kiewit here. Let's shift down to the Bi-State Bridge Commission name. And we can start talking about the Bi-State Bridge Commission name. So Mayor Kiewit, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, well, do you want to, I don't know if it's easy for you to share your screen for the people that are on virtually, or if everyone's got their packet and information in front of them, then they can just sort of see that, you know, there was the winning name was the Hood River White Salmon Bridge Authority, but it really wasn't like a huge landslide win. Mid-Columbia Bi-State Bridge Authority also had 4 votes, and so did the Nichiwana Bridge Commission. So I think really it's just a discussion, we only have 5 minutes on the agenda, so it's just a quick discussion about if anybody has any strong feelings about one versus the other, or if we should just go with the top choice.
Let's just go around.
I have a question for Catherine.
Yeah.
So Catherine, you're the one who proposed Nichiwana Bridge Authority. And I've run into an issue before. Each of the tribal nations has their own language. What language is that? Will that be an issue? And my real question is, will that be an issue with the other tribes?
Right. You know, I am not sure which language it is in, but I believe that it is like it was sort of a consensus of what all of the different tribes referred to the river as. But I don't know that. I just know that is what it's documented as, multiple tribes referring to it as Nichiwana.
Did you find it? Can you bring it up?
No, I don't have it.
And I think Marla made a good point in our email conversations about it, that it seems presumptuous of this group to name it without, I guess, if we were to elect to choose that name, it's a little presumptuous of this group to name it that without really having the buy-in and the support of our indigenous communities.
Yeah, I would
So-
tend to agree with that. Thank you.
Not that that should dissuade us from choosing that name. It's just, I think that that's that's something that I feel strongly should be something that we discuss with the tribes before we go that route, if that's the one that's selected.
And we're talking about the naming of the authority. We're not talking about the naming of the bridge. So that is a discussion that we could have concerning the bridge itself. If a request were to come in, that would seem like a more appropriate way to process that. Kind of in my book.
Yeah, I like that idea. I was my head was in the same space. Maybe since it does seem like there's interest in that name as one of the top options, it opens up an opportunity to consider the actual naming of the bridge, and maybe the authority, the governing body has, like Mid-Columbia Bi-State Bridge Authority or something that's general and gives us that flexibility. I don't know.
Well, what's pushing us here is we've got to finish the CFA, and we've got to have a name in there.
Yeah, I don't think
Yeah,
it's
that's
super
why-
important.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to jump on you.
Sure, I was just saying, I don't think the name is super important. I didn't vote in the first place because I really didn't have a strong opinion. I'm happy to go along with whatever anyone is going with. I kind of, just from what I've heard from the discussions that happened, thanks to Mayor Kiewit's poll, it sounds like my reaction to everything I heard now is I would go with Mid-Columbia just because it doesn't exclude Bingen. And still gets across the same concept.
That was the second most voted for option, right?
Yeah, there were two that were tied for second place, which was the Nichiwana Bridge Commission and the Mid-Columbia Bi-State Bridge Authority.
Mayor, I don't have my laptop logged in, but you should be able to share if you want to share your screen.
Oh,
So I would say, we like to say Mid-Columbia, but we're really part of the Lower Columbia when you look at it. Mid-Columbia is kind of a large geographic area, and I like to have things named that people can read, that people understand, and that are accurate.
So what do you like?
I'm fine with the number one vote.
Okay.
Everybody came up with Hood River
White salmon, Hood
It-
River white salmon.
It lands in, both of those townships and towns. It's gonna land in the city of White Salmon.
Hood River white salmon bridge authority.
and as far as Bingen goes, I don't think that we feel slighted by not having our name on there. Like, I think it makes sense based on, yes, the where the bridge connects in both places.
I did have one question, Steve Siegel. The legislation says the word commission. Is there any requirement that it has commission instead of authority?
You're on mute, Steve.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I couldn't hear my, can you repeat that, please?
I'm sorry, yes, is there any requirement in the legislation that it has to be a commission instead of authority?
The name of it? Well,
Yeah.
here's I don't think so. It doesn't say
Okay.
that. No, it says
Okay.
you can name it whatever you want. The problem
So-
is that they use the word commission in the statutes. That's why I've been using it.
Okay, well, we're allowed, I just want to make sure there wasn't a requirement, so there's not, so we're good.
Okay, so
It's also there's
should-
an institution, and then there's the committee which runs the institution. So you could have the bridge authority being governed by its commission, right? That's normally, that's like the way the Port Authority of New York works.
so it's the Port Authority,
It's a port authority and
Port
there's a
Authority with
commission,
the
that's,
commission underneath it.
the commission that is the board of directors.
Right. Okay, so let's go around the room. Mayor Kiewit, are you okay with Hood River White Salmon Bridge Authority?
Yes.
Mayor Keithler,
Yes,
Arthur,
Yes,
Fox, yes.
Yes.
Okay, we just named it.
Well, I want to say one more thing really quickly, and this is, I should have said it before you voted on it, but when you proposed this, because you proposed this and Marla proposed it, and when you, Mike, proposed it, you had it said White Salmon Hood River Bridge replacement or bridge authority. You had the city switched, and I just felt like Hood River White Salmon flowed better, so I put it in
Okay.
as that. But I guess that could be switched if people wanted it to, if that they felt that
So
was important.
I meant to say Hood River White Salmon exactly like you had it on the chart.
But
Does anybody want to change their vote? No,
I'm entirely neutral.
okay. Okay, so we got our marching orders, so let's move on.
I did, I resent it to, hey, Carrie. Carrie, if you could forward, those credentials to your, colleagues. I sent the credentials to you and to Jessica Pickle. And asked that you forward it off to others that would be, presenting.
Send it to Alice, Steve, and Paul.
Okay, let's go.
All right. Yes. Yes. Also send it to Carol Sneed and Cash. All right, so local appointments, and I'm gonna turn this one over to Kevin and Steve to talk about where the counties are and probably Arthur as far as where Hood River County is on their nomination process. And then we can talk to Jake about Peck County and what we're gonna do there on their nomination process.
So it might make more sense. I'm just trying to think of which way it makes more sense to talk about this. The CFA creates a requirement for a resolution. And that's all that it says to the subject. So the specifics of the resolutions are up to the are up to the counties. I wrote we had an issue where we wanted to make sure that there was an agreement in principle between the Port of Hood River and Hood River County. So I drafted Mike drafted a memo, basically an MOU, or whatever you want to call it, sort of outlining the terms that should be included in a resolution with the intention that that would be turned into a resolution by county staff. I seriously rewrote that and Mike and I agreed on it and then Steve identified an issue which we did not foresee, which is the fact that there are multiple seats. And so where we had the concept of the county asking the city and the port for nominations and or endorsements. It didn't say whether that was particular to certain seats that start in this year, seats that start in that year, seats that are the 1 year, the 2 year, the 3 year seats. And so we talked about it and we both agreed that we don't care. And then what makes most sense is to change the language so that it says that whenever there is a opening on the commission or authority, that the county will notify the port and the city and formally request that they make nominations and or endorsements, and it's up to them whether they care to do it on that seat or not. But that we would be thrilled and grateful for whatever assistance they can give us in filling those seats. And so this is like a pretty simple concept. I think we're way overthinking this whole thing. But in the process, I spoke with our staff about how we do our what rules we have internally for advertising our positions and interviewing people, et cetera. And we do have a resolution which was written in 1997 and has been updated twice since then. But I'm looking at it, there are several factors which are kind of due for updating anyway. So our intent is to roll that into an overall updating of that formal resolution that we have, which governs, and it keeps us safe for things like non-discrimination, et cetera, on all of those seats. And so we'll simply add this in. We have a list of 20, 30 other boards and commissions that we appoint people to, and this will just be one more on the list, and it will be in a certain category, which means that certain rules apply to it, but those rules really are not particularly relevant to this group. It's more the conditions that are described in the MOU, which just needs one more update, which is concerning the multiple multiple seats instead of
Has
one
that
seat.
been shared with?
I haven't not shared it yet, but there's really no reason not to. It's been going, there've been so many different conversations happening in so many different directions that it's been a little hard to track. I've also, when we get to CFA, I also have legal opinion on the CFA, which I'll roll into that.
Well, I'm really glad you guys worked out all the problems so that you could just hand it over and we can write it up.
It's really simple.
Yeah,
Like I said, I think we're way overthinking it.
Washington's gonna have to go to the city of Hood River for nominations if you don't change something.
I'll change it.
I think you might want to change a few things, yeah.
All right,
All right, so, I know I talked to Steve about this, and maybe this has all been resolved. Is there any reason for him to review the nomination documents just for missing items or anything like that, that the group would like for him to do?
So in my opinion, he's already done that. And he came up with one important issue, which we've now addressed. I don't have a problem with sending him we can send him another copy. The specifics of what the county does, I don't think, we have county attorney working on that and county staff working on that. So I'm perfectly satisfied that they'll consider all the issues that need to be considered there.
Okay, and the other reason I bring it up was when I talked to Steve, there was some elements of that related to the evaluations that the commission will go through with the bonding agencies and those types of things. We just want to make sure if there was any from that aspect that you felt like you needed somebody else to look at from that perspective, he could provide that service if you want him to look at it.
I don't see a tremendous value in that from our point of view. I would say probably not. I just, in all my experiences with bonding authorities, with the bond attorneys, they will put all the everything that they care about, they will write into their underwriting documents. And there's really, I don't think there's anything that we could pass by resolution that would have any material effect on that, because anything we pass by resolution, we can change by resolution. So any conditions that they have that they care about, they will write into their underwriting documents and will be required to, the commission will be required to agree to those before getting bonded. So I'm really not worried about that.
I just wanted to make sure that we at least had that conversation. If there was any need there.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone else has an opinion on that, but I just think that that's unnecessary.
All right. Jake, anything? We'll put back something you were
Just
just
waiting on the document.
All right.
It really, if I could just comment though, it's really, it's an understanding between the parties who are going to be working together on this. So it seems more important, I'll give you ours, but it's more important that you talk with your partners on it about
We'll
it.
get together as
Yeah.
soon as we get it.
Great, sounds good.
Thanks.
Perfect. All right, so to close this out, I want to go back to JLA.
well, can I jump in? Because I think the next logical piece to the nomination process is, I want to talk just a couple of minutes on that document I did over the Christmas holiday. I talked about the traits of a new authority. When the two counties are looking for people to assign to this, I think this bridge authority is a little bit different than some of the other committees that they typically do. So I put together a document and sent it to all the commissioners, but there's an extra copy here. And it talks about the overview of the bridge authority, definition of success of the new authority. That talks about the first phase of the authority, which is really getting the bridge built. The second phase of it is managing it through the life of the bridge. And then I talked a little bit about the types of experience that would make a really nice, well-balanced team. And if what I'd like to see us do is we come together and we reach agreement from our professional opinions as we've gained knowledge on this thing thus far. Does this make sense to provide as information guidance to the two counties to use at their discretion? It's still their decision, but we're at least telling them from our professional point of view, here are the types of folks you need on such a board.
Yeah, so I can react to this really quickly. So we appoint people to everything from the Gorge Commission to investment boards to the County Fair Board, right? And each one is a very different organization. And right now, all the members of our Board of Commissioners are very aware of what the bridge issues are, and they could probably list several of these points without being prompted. But that's gonna that's gonna fade over time. And we're still going to need to appoint qualified folks to these to this commission. So I think it's great to have something in writing that's sort of job description and helps people remember what the intent was. And
Well, I think it's a
marketing material. I think this is a great.
to me, it's a
great
good handoff from our working group and the knowledge that we've gained to the two entities.
Yep.
Okay, and then they do with it what they want to do with it, but we've provided some input to them. Everybody okay? Do you want to provide comments or is it close enough?
I guess it does raise one question that feels like a can of worms, but this authority is staged up, new commissioners are seated. Is there a scenario wherein these new seated commissioners assert in their authority a way of saying, we want to go back to the drawing board on the bridge design or some key part that we have moved far enough along? Or is that where there's maybe some insurance, especially getting that EIS in place by then, that we know there's some guardrails as this authority is finding their footing on this project, because they are going to be in charge. And sometimes there's that natural reaction when someone comes in charge that they want to assert themselves and like make a decision. And we've been carrying this so much and trying to keep it moving forward. Is this in anybody else's head? I don't know. I'm fearful of that scenario of they take a dramatic detour that sets this project back to like a square one that we've already worked through, you know, and maybe I'm just being hopefully just overly nervous or cautious.
So I wonder if Mike could tell us, have you run across that? Have you seen
That
that?
could happen with any board when they come in.
Sure, but how frequently do you see that?
I get it. That's a hard answer because it really depends on the situation. I think here, I would hope that it's a small chance because there is such a support for this cause. I think if it was a little different in that there was differing opinions or there was an agreement on the need to replace it, there would be more of a chance of that. But I mean, that always can happen. I mean, if the new board comes in and they decide to go a different direction, I don't know that there's a way to prevent that from happening.
Well, go ahead.
I totally understand what Mayor Keeler is saying. Having seen something go from like a pool that was under the city, which is kind of like our bi-state working group, and then creating this new entity, and then that group comes in and it's all new people and they say, well, we want to start back at square one. I completely understand where Marla's coming from. When I look at probably what the county is looking to do, we're looking for continuity. I would assume when we appoint these people to these positions. Finding people is never easy to put them on boards. But I think that continuity is going to be very important. I think we're probably far enough along with, having this whole stack of this is the direction we're going, that you're not going to see that, I would hope, but it's one new person on a commission can really start moving things around. So absolutely, is the risk there? Sure. Just what Mike puts forward. I think that's great. You did a lot of really good work. I'm probably going to look at this from the commission looking down, not being like, a lot of this is, staff, we're going to pay millions of dollars for staff to be in charge of a lot of this. You're more steering the ship than, down in the trenches. I know you're down in the trenches, but not everybody can be, and definitely not all the people that you put on the commission can be at all times.
Yeah, where I was going with this for the board, if you have the types of people that I listed here, it's not so much that they're down in the weeds on finance and whatnot, but I call it an intelligent customer.
Right.
Now, I've got all the trust in the world in HNTB. That still says we still got to do oversight on HNTB, and are they doing the right thing, and are they going fast enough? That's what we control, I think. So if you have an intelligent customer with these variety of backgrounds, you're in a much better position to stay ahead of HNTB. And from my perspective and experience, having an intelligent customer sitting on his side is a strong pro for the project. The projects tend to go a lot smoother when you've got an intelligent customer.
What you're describing is you're saying that you would like a range of backgrounds and skills which tend to span the at a high level, the areas which are the folks
Yes.
underneath that commission are going to be doing at a low level.
Right.
I know in the management training classes I've taken, they talk about the alternative is the captain of the ship school of management, where you stand there and you yell at people and you threaten them
Yeah, and
and they make the ship go the right place.
That works good for a short period of time,
Right.
but then.
And so what you're trying to avoid that, and I appreciate that, and I think that that's a good idea. But I don't see this in any way binds anybody.
No.
So I as to Mayor Kiefler's concerns, I understand the concerns. I'm not sure. I'm not sure I follow how this
This won't
relates
fix
to
that.
that. Right.
This won't fix it, but
I guess that's what I'm
if
saying.
you look at the schedule, the current schedule says the CFA is going to get approved by the 6 entities in February. And at the same time in February, the 2 counties are going to name the people to this new commission.
Right.
Okay, and then from March to July, they're going to be shadowing us. And that's our opportunity to provide them knowledge of where we're going, why we're going this way. Ultimately, it's going to be their decision after they're in charge.
I mean, I guess the way that I look at it is we're describing, the die will be cast by that point, presuming we have the funding. If we don't have the funding, it may very well be good to have people approaching it from different perspectives. Right?
With a couple of exceptions, in my opinion.
I'm not talking about, we
don't
build
wanna
a
go
bridge in a
back
different
to-
city or
do you
something.
want-
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
you don't want to go back now and say, hey, instead of 2 1-lane roads, we want 4. You totally change the configuration of the bridge, then it throws everything out as far as the EIS and whatnot, like I-5 right now.
Right.
And you start all over again, and you're talking, everything slides at least 3 years.
Right. I guess it doesn't seem likely that that would
I don't
happen
think
here.
it
We
would
have
either.
we have a pretty clear political consensus on this. It doesn't feel like we have a lot of, it's not, this isn't the I-5 corridor. We don't have people pushing in radically different directions. We're all in the same direction. There's been no uprising in any direction to change this. I'm not worried.
But I think I think from each of the county's point of view, as you go through your nomination and evaluation process, the county commissioners need to be looking for that.
But
No
Mike,
guarantee.
Mike, this is Christy, and isn't that kind of the reason that we have a management company in place to not
Yeah.
guide, but educate whoever's sitting on the commission of this is where we're at, and this is the stopping point of where we're at, and this is what we need to do moving forward, and we're not going to go backwards.
Well, I would offer up to you, Christy. Most of what you said, I totally agree with. You know, the HNTB is going to be there to help educate the new board. Okay. But their activity, their intensity could have a huge range of differences. If you get what I call a light board with very little real experience in the types of things that they're going to have to deal with, then it's going to take a lot more time on HNTB's part to try and educate them and kind of keep them going in the right direction.
And I would offer to that, doing things like the project delivery method, where we went through a process that you could pull back out, hopefully show to somebody and say, here was the logic behind the decision, will help to inform them to say, okay, they did a look at this, here's the information they did, and come to the same conclusion we did. I would say as long as we continue to do that, hopefully that will help to inform the next person and keep things moving in the same direction. I mean, that's about all you can do, is try to make solid, sound decisions with good backup, and then hope that carries forward with new people as they come on.
Yeah, the other thing I would say on that, Mike, is if this was a 15-20-year project, I completely understand the concern. We're looking at this to be what, a 7-year project?
Yep.
So I think it's much harder to get people to, call squirrel and want to go in a different direction when there is so much focus and we are on such a regimented timeline.
I certainly think it helps. I'm personally not too concerned that this thing's going to fall apart and here we go again. I don't think that's going to happen. I personally have a lot of trust in both counties that they're going to try and get the most qualified people that they can find to manage this thing, because it is the biggest thing in the region. And if it fails, there's a whole bunch of people are going to get tagged with it. So I'm pretty convinced that we're going to make it. The powers to be will make it work.
But the focus of the early committee is going to be on financing. It's not going to be on designing a new bridge. The bridge is already designed. Don't worry about that.
Well, that's too, your commission probably will morph as the project goes through its phases, so, your finance folks early, your construction folks later, and like, people just need to keep that in mind as the project changes to maybe more of the people you're selecting based on the phase of the project.
Right.
Okay.
Shall we move on?
Yeah.
All right, we good? All right, Jessica, Alice, if you can bring up your presentation, we'll hit your piece.
Sure. While Alice pulls it up, I just wanted to let you all know that we only have 5 minutes on today's agenda. So we wanted to focus the first part of our presentation on the feedback that we received on the primary place of business. And then all of you should have received the full summary of the feedback that we received through the public survey in your packet for today's meeting. And so if you've had a chance to go through that, you'll see that there were a lot of other topics and questions that came up through that public input. And we're going to save a couple of minutes at the end of this to just talk through how we're planning to respond to some of those comments and questions that have come through. So I'm going to pass it over to Alice real quick, who's just going to give us a quick high-level overview of what we heard from the public.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Can you see those results okay?
Yep.
We see
Okay.
the cover page.
We're on the first slide.
Oh, you're on the first page. All right, let's go here. Can you see that now?
Yep.
Oh, great. Okay, so we're just going to do a real high level overview of results as it relates to the primary place of business. So we had just a little over 1,900 total responses, which is excellent considering we did not offer an incentive. And we advertised, pretty minimally right in the very beginning. And we didn't really continue that advertising. So that's a pretty good response. We had 556 comments received. And overall, the clear preference is to locate the primary place of business in Hood River. I think it's really important to note that most of the responses came from Washington residents. And we worked with Brian at OTAC to develop a cool dashboard. And that was really instrumental in showing that participant location did not play a significant role in the selection of the headquarters location. Also just want to point out, and I think Mike might jump in, there's a little bit of difference between the words primary place of business and headquarters. We used headquarters in the summary as more of a kind of colloquial plain language, but Mike, I don't know, Mike, if you want to jump in right now and clarify that point.
Yeah, and this is just something we need to, it's kind of a secondary decision that the Bi-State Bridge Authority to make, and that is that the primary place of business does not mean that's the only place that the office headquarters can go. That physical location can be in a different state than the primary place of business. So even though the primary place of business might be Oregon, we could locate headquarters in White Sand River. So just something we'll need to talk through once the commission is put together, authorities put together. I just want to make sure everybody's aware of that and are thinking about that as we go to that decision later down the road.
I like my idea of putting it mobily, put it in an RV. Yeah.
Okay.
I've got one for sale.
There we go.
All right.
That's what you're doing.
Or go ahead, Ellen.
And then in the open comments, we were able to extrapolate that many people commented that cost was the primary factor. We heard over and over again that people just said, yes, sure, I'd like Washington to be represented, but if it means that tolls will increase or there's less money for the project or it costs more, then Oregon is better. And then also through Brian's modeling, we were able to show that the number of uncertain responses, so I don't know or I don't care, was not enough to change this outcome. So we feel pretty good about this outcome given the people who responded. And then I just wanted to show just a very high level snapshot of the sort of quantitative data that we received. Again, you can see 76 participants selected Hood River. So the majority, and we had a pretty small amount, about 14% of that kind of uncertain response. And then 10% selected white salmon. So now we're going to move to, and I'm going to have Mike head this up, but we are going to ask the group to support a final recommendation to locate the primary place of business in Oregon. So Mike, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Yep. So just wanted to make sure we got this on there and we did, if there was any additional questions, we could answer those. And if not, then have the group take an action of a recommendation that would be taken to the board.
And again, this goes into the CFA.
And this would
So
then go into the CFA and be the location of the primary place of business. So I'll leave it, turn it over to you all.
So I thought the way that this whole thing started was that we had this discussion. We thought that it probably made sense for technical reasons to put it in Oregon, but we wanted to know if there was any large opposition to it. The answer is no.
Right.
I think we're done. You did a
Yeah.
great job. They answered the question.
I need everyone else to say yes.
okay, so let's go through. So Arthur, you're okay with Oregon?
Yes.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I wanted to hear from Mayor Marla. I saw a post that she posted online and if she'd had any responses back from that.
I have. I mean, I've definitely, I don't know about you, Jake, but certainly a lot of people have reached out to me throughout that survey process. And I know I expressed just internally with Michael and the JLE team, some of the concerns on the questions. Look, clearly a majority is saying Hood River. I think those questions could have been worded better. Do I think it would have changed it completely to a switch of 76% saying white salmon? Probably not, but in my gut, I do feel like this will continue to reappear as this project goes on. And I don't think it was conveyed as best as we could if it was primary place of business in Washington and what the true cent difference would be in that toll, which is not massive, potentially those benefits that could be seen. So most people I heard of, yes, the frustration was feeling like the questions just walked you to a decision on Oregon. And when I would get into it, which we did at our last council meeting of, that figure of potentially almost $300,000 going into the city of White Salmon or Bingen if it was Washington based, and that would be at the expense of maybe a 10-cent higher toll. I think it does make people engage more on considering the true option that exists. So that's tough. I mean, I think that ultimately, all things considered, yes, a majority of what we have to take into account does seem to lead to Oregon being the best place. But back to maybe this first generation of commissioners, I think it almost heightens, to me, the emphasis on, if possible, having those headquarters located in Washington, or finding that balance as we go through this process to really get into the community that this is a shared entity and a shared effort, because I think that it's going to keep rearing its head if it's an Oregon primary place of business, an Oregon waterfront headquarter location. And
Marla, I'll just tag on that there were many comments that were more nuanced about making sure that services were available on the Washington side, that even if the primary place of business, people were concerned, making sure that that the Washington side could be, that the people could access the same services for the bridge on the Washington side as well. So I do think that, not to I think that people, that there is a need for representation beyond the primary place of business in Washington as well.
Yeah. And so I guess in a roundabout way, Jake, to get back to the core of your original question, was there this overwhelming onslaught by that post I put out there last week of this absolutely should be in Washington? No. So that tempers me a little bit. It feels odd to sit here and see that bigger picture and not want to be a voice to say, I think there are things to consider about that location being in Washington, but I think for where this decision lays in the bigger scheme of all the things we need to be focusing on, I think that, having it placed in Oregon is not necessarily closing the door on future opportunities for the Washington side to benefit, and we all benefit if the new bridge is here. I just wish that maybe through this survey and the outreach that had been done, I felt more confident that those results were showing 1,900 people that really felt like they saw the whole picture. And then I wonder where it would land. I don't think, like I said, that it would be switching to 76% white salmon, but I also don't think that it would be showing such a skew that we have right now.
Mayor Kiefler, how much of this are we talking about sales tax, and how much of it is something that would be addressed by having the actual offices be on the Washington side?
Well, I don't know that I'm the best person to speak to it. I think Stephen's on the Zoom as well, but my understanding is that, and that's where maybe the location factors in long term, but if the headquarters were here, then yes, initially it's always going to then be that public utility tax that would come into whichever entity on the Washington side has the authority where the PBP is located. And that is around $300,000 a year, changing over time with inflation. Sales tax, as I understand it, triggers if it was located here, and then all those maintenance costs that, purchases and supplies that the authority is bringing in to do that maintenance would trigger that benefit. But I think the more significant one is that public utility tax, if I'm understanding it correctly.
But Mayor Kiefler, what we were kind of kicking around here is for the cost of the bridge and the operation cost of the bridge. It's more economical to stick that component into Oregon. as far as the headquarters of the entity, we can put it over in White Salmon, we can put it in Bingen. We got a lot of flexibility there. And we can change it over time. But the thing that you can't change is the home state of the bridge itself. So,
Yeah.
you know, your cost that you're just talking about, if the bridge entity stays in Oregon and we put the office in Washington, the only real payments that Washington would get was the rent and the lights and the water for that building.
So just to clarify, Mike, you're saying that even if at some point the commission decided to change where the entity was based,
No.
that that's not allowed?
Is my understanding, and Mike and Kevin and if Steve's still on, they can clarify it. You have to declare where the entity is going to be financially, tax-wise located.
It's under whose laws is it incorporated? is the
Yeah,
Yes.
like where is it
Is it
born?
Oregon or is it Washington? So
Right.
this thing says, okay, it's gonna be in Oregon. Now, where you run it from, an office in our meeting like we're doing today, we can have it in Oregon, we can have it in Washington, we can change it back and forth. That you can legally do as many times as you want to.
Right, but what does that affect? Does that
Nothing.
change?
It doesn't change anything.
Well, it would affect. one
But
thing.
the,
It would
yeah.
affect People working in that office.
Well,
would not have to be.
Yeah, so if you had permanent staff, and hopefully, we're gonna have a very small staff.
And then as far as sales tax, and Steve, are you on?
I'm on, yes.
So I'm gonna let you clear this up in a second, but as far as sales tax, if something is purchased in Washington, it would just be like anything else. It does not get that company out of paying Washington sales tax for buying something in Washington.
It's place of delivery.
The plate, yes, so.
That's correct.
Those taxes would still be there. So if Washington has some supply of whatever, they would still get the sales tax from supplying that to the.
So as an example, we just talked about,
concrete.
if we're buying a bunch of piles.
Yep.
And they're fabricated and we buy them in Washington State. Washington State gets a
No,
sales
no,
tax.
it's where they're delivered. It's not where you buy them.
Well, assuming that it's delivered on the Washington side, then Washington gets it.
That's what I-
If you split load it, some on either side, then you have to split the invoice.
So
So,
I
Can
would
I just ask
say
a
that-
question to the group? It sounds like once the entity is picked, like where it's based from, not where it's run from, but where it's based out of, that is no longer able to be changed, correct?
That's my understanding.
And I think the terminology we should use to be clear is under which state's laws is it incorporated? So let's just be careful. That is the question before us. Under which state's laws are we incorporating this entity? Operationally, those are separate questions, but I don't think we've got a clear answer yet on, for example, how the public utilities tax affects it depending on what laws it's incorporated under.
Yeah, public utility tax, this is Steve Siegel. The public utility tax is a tax essentially on the toll revenues. And that tax would be levied if the primary place of business was in Washington, but would not be levied if it's in Oregon.
And Steve, are you 100% positive that the public utility tax would be levied in Washington? Because I did a review of the RCWs and a toll road is not considered the public
Right, I
utility.
thought they were exempt, right? That I was gonna bring it up next.
The public utility tax would apply. We retained a Washington-based law firm, Pacifica, Stacy Lewis in particular, And they wrote up a memo on it, which was distributed, but you don't probably recall. But they concluded that the public utility tax would apply if the primary place of business was in Washington.
Interesting.
Primary place of business or location of primary office?
No, primary place of business. It's only, it depends, it's whose laws apply.
Okay, that's what I'm asking. Thanks.
Okay.
So I guess Marla, you came up 10 to 15 cents or up to 25 cents, right? Is what you guys worked out. My fear is that I'm gonna be in favor of Hood River because I think we're gonna need that 10, 15 or 25 cents. In the long run for the operation and more importantly, the payback of the bond. We just went through a grant process and didn't get anything. And I think every ability we can to keep that powder dry, I would say, is important. While I do think that, if Oregon does implement some sort of a utility tax or something, that should be shared between the city of Hood River and the city of White Salmon, as they're both together at some point, if we could build that in there. But I still think Oregon makes more sense.
Are we done talking or we want to talk more about this? Here's what I propose. As we adopt Oregon as the place of business. And we're following Oregon financial law. And we chair where the office is going to be and let the new board decide that. And in between that time and now, we can decide whether we want to have some of our meetings across the river or here. It's very flexible. But I would suggest that we try and reach consensus if we can on this recommendation. So we can move forward into the CFA. But if you want to take more time on it, we need to get this right. Are we ready to go?
I would like to review the memo that Steve said we have. I want to be sure I understand that.
Yeah, I guess, and I guess we're all having the benefit of we're in our terms, but knowing that Mayor Blackburn just came on board, I guess I am maybe siding with, do we push this decision to our next agenda? And does everyone then have a chance to, with the context of today's conversation, go back through and, come into the next meeting knowing that we need to make a commitment either way?
Steve, can you take an action to get that memo over to Mike and he'll get it distributed to everybody?
Will do.
The other question I would have is if the primary place of business is in the city of White Salmon or the city of Bingen, then does sales tax get charged against every single vehicle that drives across that bridge?
The answer to that would be no, but that's also addressed in the memo.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, see, Steve, you got a little bit ahead of us in this case, which is dangerous because that means that we don't remember what you told us about this.
Okay.
Okay, let's move on to the next subject.
All right. So we're gonna move back up to Paul and Steve and go back to a discussion on the project delivery method.
Oh, Mike, do you want me to not talk about the last two slides? The qualitative results that we got in the summary?
I would like to propose,
Yeah,
as we're
I
running
think
long on this
Let's
topic.
take 2 minutes and do that. That's looking at the survey questions.
Yeah.
Looking at the trends.
Okay.
And I also wrote up a document on that with about,
And she's gonna touch on that too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We were gonna actually chair that to another meeting.
Okay.
Park that in another meeting. So, all right, yeah, real quick, or else.
Really quick. Okay, so the survey also asked quite a bit of other information. So from that, we did some qualitative analysis, and just to reiterate, this is not a surprise, but the majority of the open comments were related to tolling. So we had 556 total comments, and 212 of those were related to tolling. So that's about 40%. I'd say like overall themes about tolling was people want low or no tolls. There's a strong concern about impacts of toll cost. And then in particular, the communities in White Salmon and Bingen are especially reliant on the bridge and sensitive about tolls. The second most common theme that we saw in the qualitative results was people want this new bridge built quickly, and they're excited for the bridge. And then the third most kind of prevalent theme was really people want that walk and bike. They want that bike ped access on the bridge, which I think is a common theme that you've heard in the EIS open comment summary, so that's not new. And then we did ask people to tell us what they're most interested in for the project. And they said project updates, construction impacts, and then again, funding and tolling. So we're seeing a theme here. People are very sensitive about cost to themselves, cost for the bridge as it relates to their own finances. And then this last slide, just want to show you here communications opportunities. So these are key messages that we are crafting around the open comments that we received in the survey. A lot of this, Mike Fox, we took your document that you created and we sort of incorporated that into our key messages and sort of modeled it a bit as an FAQ. So some of these are question-based. But again, the tolling questions are, you know, where has my tolling money that I've already paid for gone? And why don't we have enough money set aside for the new bridge? I think I saw one comment that was like, I've paid $20,000 in tolls over the last 30 years. Why isn't that enough to pay for the bridge? How much will the bridge cost? How do we pay for a bridge? Who will oversee the bridge? So there's still some questioning and confusion about who's actually gonna manage the bridge, though there were a lot of real positive comments about this new bridge authority. What will the new bridge look like? And again, that we need the new bridge now. Why is it taking so long? And then Mike Fox, also in your great document, you really highlighted our 2022 accomplishments so far. So that's also included in this kind of communications opportunities that came out of the qualitative data. And that's it. That's all I have.
One of the things we're going to do just real quick on communications is go through kind of a 3-month look ahead on communications. So we will meet with either a smaller group and then update the bigger group on what's our topic going to be for January, what are we going to be talking about in February, what are we going to talk about in March. And you'll see that start to come at every one of these meetings is here's what the new topics are and what our messaging is for the next 2 weeks or next month, depending on the sequence. So just something to be aware of. We will start addressing these things and reaching out to the public with very definitive, discussion points with the purpose of getting ahead of the conversations and ahead of the communications.
And so there were some side discussions that there's some factual errors in Mike's work, and I assume those are all communicated. Okay.
That's why we want to sit down and go through and what we want to do is make sure we got the right message, make sure it's on point, and then we'll bring it to you and say, here's what we're going out with, make sure everybody saw it before we go out to the public with it.
And I'll just add that once we get approved messaging with this group, we did get several hundred requests for responses from the public from that public survey. And so we'll respond directly to those folks once we have all accurate information.
Okay, just a friendly reminder, until July 1st, we still have to get approval by the port.
Great.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Shift to delivery method. All right, Paul.
All right, thanks, Mike, and good afternoon, commissioners. My name is Paul Houston with HNTB, and with me to talk about this topic is Steve Howe. We're both on. And to start, maybe a brief recap of what we talked about almost a month ago, in terms of our evaluation of potential delivery methods for this project. We have been looking at 5 different delivery methods that are potentially useful for this project. We've also been meeting with a number of contractors and designers that are potentially interested in a future project. To date, we've had about a dozen or so formal meetings with various contractors and designers that do this kind of work and have an interest in the project. And with them, we've really explored what is their interest, what are their concerns, what risks do they see, and then what recommendations would they have all of us consider in your choice of a final delivery method. So we talked through that a bit last month, and then we shared this graph here at the last meeting, which really summarizes our evaluation of the different options. Now, there's a lot on this page, so let me guide you through what we have shown here. So what we looked at, first of all, in the upper left part of this chart, under the column evaluation factors, there's 13 listed there. And these are different attributes that we have heard from the port and from industry and from our own collective experience about things that are important for a project like this, important to consider, success factors, if you will, to be considering and evaluating the different delivery options. So we identified 13 of those. And then as you move a little bit to the right, you see a column titled weight, and that was our estimation of relative to each other, how significant are these different factors? In other words, they're not all equal. They're all important, but they're not all equal. Some stand out as being more important for this project and your goals and the needs of the project, more important than others. So the 2 and 1 reflect that weighting, 2 being more important relatively, 1 being important, but not quite as much. And then as you move to the right, we get into the 5 different delivery methods: design bid build, design build, CMGC, progressive design build, and then P3 or public-private partnerships. And our approach to this was first qualitative, which is represented by the color codings and the symbols. So a blue shading represents, for those different factors, a delivery method that would be most appropriate in providing a successful or a beneficial outcome. Green is appropriate, slightly less so than blue. Yellow is least appropriate. And then there's some non-shaded ones for either not applicable or not really useful for that particular factor. So at a glance, the idea behind this table is you're looking for where you see a lot of blue, because that's good. You're also looking for where you see a lot of yellow, because that is not so good. And so at a glance, what you can see is for each of these delivery method options, each one has some blue, each one has a few green, and a few have a fair number of yellow items. And so what we did then to give some depth to this qualitative approach is we assigned we calculated rather a score for each of those color-coded qualitative ratings. And you can see down in the lower left where we break down how we assigned a score to each of those ratings. And I won't go through that in detail just yet, but what we presented last month is the outcome of our evaluation reflects a recommendation to you is progressive design build is really the most advantageous delivery option for this project. Now, a quick, so Steve, I'll ask you to add in here a quick summary of what progressive design build is, just to remind the commissioners of what that looks like.
Sure. Progressive design build is a type of a contract where you would go out and you hire designer and contractor that are on the same team. You bring them on, and the contractor in the first phase of that work is an advisor to the designer and to the port as far as what the most beneficial way to build the project is. And they continue to consult in that role throughout the design. And then at a point about, I'll just say about 2/3 to 3/4 of the way through the design, you start asking that contractor how much they will come up with a price for that work that you have mutually built together, the project that you've mutually designed together. And then you'll negotiate out that work with them. The advantage of it on this particular project is that because we don't have all of the funding, we're going to be able to have that designer package the project or sub-projects in a way that makes use of the funding, and the contractor can build each of those packages individually. Whereas in design bid build and a hard bid design build, and actually in P3 as well, you pretty much have to have all your funding in place, because you will have a construction contractor on board while you're building the entire project. And if you don't have all your funding, you very easily get in a position where you'll have to ask them to wait, and that's always an expensive proposition. They'll be waiting for the rest of your funding to come in.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. One other point to think about is another reason that we see progressive design build is the most advantageous for this project is that it reflects the feedback we were hearing from industry. You know, that was one of the key reasons we invited or gave the opportunity rather to companies to come in and talk with us, is to understand what would prevent them from pursuing a project like this. And overwhelmingly, the feedback we heard is, given, like Steve said, we don't have all the funding today, but they're interested in coming in that early kind of collaborative arrangement that Steve described, that a more collaborative form of contracting where they are at the table, contractor, designer, owner group, together sorting out what are the risks, who's best able to take those risks, how can we design or design around or avoid those risks. All of that collaborative effort is really what you find in that CMGC or progressive design build approach. And that was the overwhelming feedback we heard from potential contractor teams, is you really need to do a collaborative approach on this, because it will have to be a stage project. And so that, in addition to all the factors Steve mentioned, really was how we arrived at this recommendation to you that we choose a progressive design build delivery method.
Mayor Kiewit, do you have a question?
Yeah, and I do. I think we discussed it last time. But my recollection is that even if for some reason we were able to land a bunch of funding, that the progressive design build still is still the top rated plan. Isn't that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
I'll give you my opinion. If we had $550 million today, over the estimate a little bit, allowance for growth. If we had $550 million in the bank today, I'd be voting for design build contract. We don't. So in my opinion, the next best case where we have partial funding, and we got to be flexible on the partial funding, the next best option for us and least risk, not only to us, is a progressive design build.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Kevin.
Hey, Paul, this is Kevin Greenwood. I noticed on your chart and item number 9, the agency experience availability. Can you just briefly describe the differences between the scoring and why progressive design build is advantageous to that item. That being agency experience, availability, and then you show the DOTs. And so I'm not really sure what that item is describing.
Yeah, Kevin. So that line 9, let's start at the far left, actually, with design bid build and then design build. Those two columns are both blue, both double pluses showing most appropriate. And that's reflecting the experience, well, certainly design bid build, both state DOTs, the port as an agency. It's a very familiar, tried and true delivery method from an experience of the market and the agencies. It's very familiar. And so from that standpoint, familiarity is a good thing.
Gotcha.
And that's why that factor for design bid build was rated most appropriate. Design build, the thought there is that both state DOTs have experience, have projects. The market is familiar how it works on both sides of the river. Our team collectively has extensive design build experience from around the country. From an experience perspective, we rated that as also most appropriate because it is so familiar. Now, CMGC is less so when you look at the experience level on both sides of the river with the two DOTs, less so than design build or design bid build. The same with progressive. WashDOT has done 2. ODOT has not done any yet. And so the experience level of both CMGC and progressive is slightly less from an agency perspective. And therefore the market in the region is not as familiar or having used it. So that's why it rated slightly below, but still appropriate compared to design build or design bid build.
I appreciate that, Paul. So as this project progresses and there's some question about at what point and how the project's going to engage ODOT, does that become more, or is that a component that will come into play? I mean, ODOT's familiarity with progressive design build, and if we do have to engage ODOT for technical review, is that an issue, or is that why it's green?
I'll give you my opinion. I don't think it's a big issue because especially if we package this thing up into logical subsections, they're reviewing that piece of the design. It's design.
Yeah.
You know, the only thing that's going to be a little weird for them is that they're looking at this design package, which there's some assumptions based on another package that can come into play. That's a little bit of complexity in there.
Yeah, and one of the things we need to sit down with both WashDOT and ODOT and even the local agencies is what they own as far as the project goes and what they're going to care about. Because they don't own the bridge, I think their involvement in that is going to be different than, say, the signal out here that ODOT owns, or the roundabout on 14 that WashDOT will end up owning. So I think that will come into play, but then how that relates is ODOT has not done a progressive design build. They are aware of it. They've done CMGC, which is very similar. And really the main difference is just how you contract the designer and the contractor. We did talk to their alternative delivery person with ODOT and let them know that we were going through this. Progressive is something that they do want to do. They are just focused right now on CMGC and getting that process correct, and on design build and getting that process correct. But they ultimately want to get into progressive design build. So I think this will offer them an opportunity to see how it functions without actually being the controlling agency of it. So I think that'll bring a value to ODOT. But as far as their involvement, they will really just see the reviews that we send to them or the reviews that they need to be involved in, not so much the process or really that much of the collaboration.
Keep in mind, federal funding that comes through the project doesn't go directly to the port or to the authority. It goes through ODOT or WashDOT, the administrator.
And that's why ODOT is involved in the project, because WashDOT has basically said, ODOT, you be the lead agency in coordination with WHWA. And that's why ODOT is the primary DOT that we've had to work with.
I'll offer one thing, and it's slightly off track, but not much. When we design and build this bridge, we need to make sure that at the end of the day, ODOT could accept it in their portfolio. Washington could accept it into their portfolio. We don't want them coming back and say, well, you didn't meet our spec. We don't want to touch it.
So, yeah, and just so you know, we had a meeting the other day, and we haven't completely finalized this yet. They're leaning toward using WashDOT's progressive design build as a template. It won't be exactly the same, but it will basically be a template. And then leveraging both states' criteria to stay in line with those as much as possible.
So the idea is whoever's got the most stringent, we ought to be looking hard at meeting that. But
I would say, I'm of course in support of what we've come up with. The one thing that I worry about is with the progressive design build and the fact that Oregon hasn't really done it before. And what we're seeing right now is our BO is held up because something happened somewhere else, and so they want to enlarge this. I worry about our last page here with all of our regulatory compliance and certification and everything. And if we think that we're going to be able to progressively design, build, and get in the water and do all this stuff, and you're going to come in Army Corps, someone's going to say, well, you haven't finished your 404, you haven't finished this, and we're not going to sign off on this until your design is completely done and you know exactly what you want to do, because this is how it fits in our boxes.
you're absolutely
That's-
right. That is a risk.
That is a
We
lot.
gotta- We gotta watch it.
It is a risk, and that's where the best you can do is stay in front and stay engaged in them. We've already started engaging Army Corps. We've already started meeting with the Coast Guard. We already have met with the ODOT and WashDOT as far as the JARPAs and JPAs. And I think that communication is the key to kind of staying in front of that as best you can. And then I think having the contractor and the designer on board so that when you go to those meetings, you can have them sit across the table and say, this is how we're building it. It's not a question. This is the people that are going to be building it. It helps them to have that conversation with those agencies so that it's not, well, we're going to bid this and they may or may not build it this way, but we think they're going to build it this way. We'll be able to sit down with them and say, this is exactly how we're going to do it.
But I share your concern, especially on that, which is the environmental permits. So the next step in the environmental permit schedule is to take those lines and bust them down to a lot of detail so we can see the steps. And then on those steps, where does it tie back into design? And then on design, how does a progressive project number one relate into this? So all of that has to be tied together to really be able to say, this is the portion of the permits that we need to be able to do that first project.
So, any other questions related to the delivery method? If not, then I think the question to the group is, are you okay with us moving forward or support the recommendation to move forward?
Any other discussions on this before we?
Yeah, so obviously, all of these mechanisms exist because they make sense for somebody under some circumstances. So where it looks like we're trying to evaluate which is the superior delivery mechanism, that really the question is, given our current circumstances, which is the best for us? And the fact that we do not have the funding pretty much leaves us with one conclusion. So I don't have a problem with moving forward. I get frustrated by these analyses, which make it seem, this may be a communication mechanism, but I don't think that the actual weighted calculations or anything has any particular meaning to me. In fact, I mean, it's, you're mixing apples and oranges. P3 isn't even a delivery method really in the same sense that the others are.
Well, it's a
So
contracting method, but
yeah, so it really, there are circumstances under which, you know, you said yourself, you would go design build if you have the money. We don't.
Yeah, I
Right,
mean,
so
this-
but the-
if we had no chance
the-
at all of getting the money, then I would be still pushing on P3, but we do.
Yeah.
So we're not there. So
So
I
I
know where
think-
we are.
the way I looked at this thing is that progressive design build gives us the most flexibility tied to almost any kind of funding scenario that pops out.
Right.
To keep the project moving.
And the problems that will
potentially-
arise not because we're doing progressive design build, but because we don't have the money to do
Right.
the pieces that people wish we had already done.
Right.
So it's not like we say, oh, well, we'll call it something else and then the money appears. It's like, no, it doesn't work that way.
So let's say we get down a year and magically we get $500 million pop in our lap.
I did buy a lottery ticket for the project,
That's good.
back when it was $500 million, but we didn't win, sorry.
And we're partway into progressive. I still keep going with the progressive, just accelerate the hell out of it.
Yeah, and this chart is specific to this project, right, and the
Right.
conditions of this project right now.
Right.
So, you know, if you change one of those things, then, you know, your chart changes. So.
Yeah, I could quibble with all sorts of things on it, but I won't. There's no point.
Okay, anybody else have anything else that they want to question and discuss on this? Marla?
No, I'm good.
Okay, Catherine?
I'm also good. I think progressive design build is the winner.
Okay, so we've got one progressive, Marla, are you okay with progressive? Okay, that's a yes. Arthur? Yes. Jake? Yes. Fox, yes. We got consensus.
So one of the things you'll see in your packet is a schedule for the procurement process for progressive design build. So I'll let you review that, and if you have questions, we can talk about that either separately or at the next meeting as far as what the schedule says.
I
We
would,
are looking
I
at
would really
opportunities
recommend
to
that
advance
next,
the schedule.
we set aside time to go through the schedules and a quick. To make sure that people are comfortable with the end date. And if we want to try and force it earlier, we do
Yeah,
that.
and one of the things we'll do, and the only reason I'm kind of hurrying through now is because we got a bunch of other things to do, but we will at the meeting start talking about the schedule more. And that will be a component of what we talked about is kind of where we are in schedule, what's coming up in the next 2 weeks, what we've done the last 2 weeks, and talk about, you know, just keep everybody informed on where we are on the schedules.
Is there anything in what we just did on saying progressive design build, which will change what you're doing between now and next meeting? The reason I ask is because it's a little awkward. We have Mayor Blackburn who doesn't get to really participate because he hasn't been sworn in. Is there any reason why we wouldn't do the same vote next week after he's been sworn in?
I would recommend we just keep going.
Just keep going.
And we're probably not. If we've got however many now, what, 5?
This isn't really a decision. This
It's
is
not, yeah.
Yeah.
I would say, let's put this one behind us and keep going. And then we bring him on board with all the new issues that are, and we're gonna have a slug of them going forward.
And we are gonna sit down with them and go through kind of where we are, where the project is. We're gonna get to speak on what's going on.
Is he on?
He's on, yeah. That's why I brought it up.
Oh, hi, Paul.
Yes, he is right here.
Welcome
Hello.
To the team. Glad you're
I
with
think I'm
us.
pretty much ready. I think I'm pretty much ready to design and build the bridge. So I'm feeling
Okay.
totally.
Can you have it done next week?
That's very
Thursday.
progressive of you.
Thanks, y'all, for all the hard work. I'll be getting up to speed.
Great, Paul. We're glad you're here. Thanks for volunteering or getting volunteered. Okay, let's keep moving.
All right, so grant status, everyone's aware, we did not receive any of the grants that we applied for in 23. We did receive a few comments that we are addressing, and we are reaching out to do a debrief. So once we do that, we can do a full summary of what the comments meant. and we'll do that as soon as we get done with the debriefing, hopefully before the 23rd meeting. We'll go back and go through those. So, there is also a funding, finance, and tolling schedule in here that you can take a look at. It goes through the general funding schedule, but also goes through the TIFIA schedule and outline that. So that's in here. We'll continue to track against that. We also are in the process of developing a grant surveying grant, which was due February 28th. That grant we believe we're gonna have for about $5 million on that, and that grant is to take a look at the Whitehead transit connections to the bridge, so that we have a picture of what's gonna be at the ends of the bridge, and we can talk to that when we pursue other grants. It's similar to kind of what we were applying for with the SF4A grant. What it'll do is then allow us to apply for the SF4A instead of a planning grant. If we would get this one, we could go for the full SS4A grant. At that point, if we don't get this one, then we would do the same thing with the SS4A and take a look at it. Really, that we've been made aware of, there's no real map or information out there of what happens when you get off the bridge and how are you going to get to Bingen, to the Amtrak station, to White Salmon, to the connection at the new trail they're building on the old Route 30. So we want to make sure we are able to summarize all of that. And that's what this grant money is to do. And I think that'll help us support us to get a lot of additional, be stronger when we're putting together our applications for funding, because we will have a better full transportation system look.
And you think it's gonna cost $5 million to do that?
We think we're gonna ask for $5 million and hope that will pay, that should pay for all of the study that we need to do plus.
The one word of caution I have here is I personally support this. But we gotta be real careful that it doesn't take any effort away from getting on with the bridge.
Yeah, this would be a different group of people coming in and doing this study, and it would be in coordination with the local communities to just make sure, like I said, there's just not a master plan that I've been made aware of that shows what happens when you put the bike ped on the bridge, where do they go and how do they tie in, and what's the system look like that you're actually impacting. So I think that just makes our grant applications for the other pieces much better and gives us a stronger position for that. Okay.
Does that include money for the acronym jar?
Oh, yes. It does.
I'm gonna bring that in
I
next
could
week.
probably fund the bridge if we start.
You might get halfway there.
One of the other pieces of information I think we gave out to everyone. We need to give out to everyone. Brian's working on giving out to everyone. Is a summary of the grant reimbursements funding that we currently have. What this and we're gonna, this will continue to evolve. We're gonna have a monthly report, finance report, that'll be included as part of your packet that'll also elaborate on this. But what this shows is the current funding that we've received, the cost spent through 11/30, the remaining committed amount, and then the remaining funding that would be available for us going forward. So we'll provide this probably on a monthly basis. It will be on a monthly basis to just track where we are against the 20 million. As we get additional sources of funding in, we'll adjust it and track against that. We'll also have another tracking that shows how we're tracking against the PCE, which will show how we're tracking against the 500 million and where the project is in relationship to the 500 million. So, any questions on this one? Arthur seems like he has lots of questions.
No, I'm just counting acronyms.
So the purpose of this is if you think about your checkbook. And you're trying to write a check for something else. You need to know how many checks you've already written. Some of them have been cashed, some of them haven't. But you can't spend that money that you've already written a check for. So that's the concept of commitment versus paid.
Right, and so in your remaining commitments for HNTB, because that's where most of it is, how long should that take to get through that cash?
Right now, we're contracted through June. So in between now and the end of June, what I want to do is take a look at where we are versus the next 3 years, which is what we're anticipating the next contract to be. And then say, okay, we are or are not going to spend the 5 million that we have outstanding. Right now, that's anticipated to spend that in the next 6 months. If we don't spend that, then we'll look at that and how it carries through. Some of it we already know is like the geotech. Instead of doing an update in July for 6 months worth of work and trying to split the scope of work that really needs to be a continuous scope of work. We put all of that money in our last amendment for the geotech. So that carries all the way through November, but we're on a contract. So there will be some adjustments to that 5 million as to the schedule over the next 3 years. So I don't want to, what I'm trying to say is it's not 5 million over the next 6 months. It'll be 5 million plus whatever the new scope will be outside of that for the next 3 years.
So I
And
guess,
whatever you don't get done.
Yes.
I guess a better line on that would be, is it would be good to see per quarter how much you expect based on this to spend over that time, because saying you're gonna spend $5 million in the next 6 months, can I have a job?
Yeah.
You want to know the actual burn rate?
Yeah, I want to know the burn rate and the timing of that.
So Brian's working on that. The burn rate is one something we'll track and be able to say, you know, okay, we're burning so much a month. We anticipate another 6 months and we'll be at the end of our budget or 10 years or whatever the number is. That'll be in the more detailed report that we'll give you. This was just kind of a snapshot of where we are today.
Purpose of this, I ask it for it. We're gonna vote on amendment 2. We're gonna go through that. And I said before, I vote yes on amendment 2. I want to know how much money we've still got in the kitty.
And we want to create a dashboard. I don't know whether it'll be an active dashboard, or it'll just be a static report that you'll see that gives you all that transparency of here's what we spent, here's how much we spent, here's what we delivered for that. So if there's no questions, we can answer any questions that come up related to any of that stuff.
Keep going.
Treaty MOAs, we have submitted the Yakima Nation MOA to ODOT. We have a meeting with them tomorrow where we hope to get an update on when that will be going to the Yakima Nation. We sent it over on the 22nd of December. So I need to hear from the gentleman that's leading that, Roy, and find out when he anticipates to send that to Yakima. The other thing that we are working on is to take that Yakima and repeat that for the next person, Umatilla. So Econ is working on that now to incorporate that. And then the fourth treaty tribe, which is the Warm Springs, they only wanted to speak with the agencies to do just government to government. So FHWA has sent a email or a letter to the tribe requesting that they participate. That was sent on the 27th. So if we don't hear back from them, I think we're also going to reach out to them. We've got some connections that we're going to try to find out what the status is and if they're willing to come to the table to start talking about the treaty MOA.
We had a little working session a couple of days ago with Herb. And we threw a challenge down because initially the schedule showed that this thing wouldn't get done until August. And I said, I threw the challenge down to him. I said, we got to figure a different way of doing this. We have to break a little glass. Let's break a little glass, but we need to get this turned around. We threw a challenge down to get it done by May. So we'll see what it can do.
So in your packet of schedules, there is a treaty MOA schedule that's in there. And it does reflect the Yakima kind of going first, and then the Umatilla and the Nez Perce running at the same time. And then Warm Springs a little bit further behind those two, just because we haven't had as good a communication with the Warm Springs today.
Yes, specifically, we asked Herb to think about how do you break into Warm Springs and get them on board earlier, and not just let it take its natural course. You've got to influence it somehow. Okay.
Great. RBNC, what you've also seen in your packet is there is a schedule on the geotech exploration that will start on February 6th. We could have all permits, we were hoping to start on the 16th, but the permits will not clear until the 19th, so in rescheduling the drillers, the first time they were able to come back was February 6th. So we should have all permits, cultural resources was ready to go. So we should be ready to go with the on-land Oregon borings on February 6th. And then we will move forward from there. With the Washington side, we have started the right-of-way process to reach out to the private owner on the Washington side to get a right of entry. He previously gave one during the NEPA process, so we don't know of any reason why he would not. But we need to get that right of entry. We also need to have a conversation with the BIA to discuss any need for right of entry over the PFAS site because it does extend out over the water. So we're doing some research to find out what right of entries, if any, we need there. And then the Washington and the in-river borings will start this summer to do those. And then that geotech work is on schedule to be produced in time to roll into our RFP and into our progressive design build schedule to be able to inform the teams pursuing that work. So any questions on geotechnical? One other schedule is the surveying and mapping schedule. We are getting out and starting our survey. What you'll see on that is right now they're doing existing data collection. They will then also set the coordinates and control points for the project, as well as determining the jurisdictional boundaries for ODOT, WashDOT, and any local agencies. Doing utilities locates and identifying all the utilities in the area, and just getting all that prep work done for the final designer and final contractor. And that should wrap up somewhere around the 1st of April. They'll have all the survey work put together. And then also is the permitting sheet that we talked about. And that right now is really just a list of all the permits and general timelines. As Commissioner Fox said, we're going to get some more detail into that. Some of that will evolve as we get the progressive design build team on board, because it determines how we build the project will determine the sequencing of the permits. But we are doing a lot of early contacts, updating people. Some of them haven't been talked to for a couple of years, so we're just refreshing them on the project, making sure they realize the project's starting back up for them and that they're aware of what's going on. The other piece is Amendment 2. If you want to wait till the commissioner gets back, or Kevin, if you want to start on.
Yeah, I can start on that. So just based upon the working groups discussion over the last several months, there's really been 3 areas that there has been some interest in seeing additional budget identified for. One was focused on the October legislative tour that brought about 35 legislators from both Oregon and Washington that absorbed a good chunk, if not all of that budget. And so this amendment number 2 increases the budget capacity for future communications, marketing programs that would be based upon the working group's desires. So that would allow you the ability, if there's an event coming up or something that we need to prepare for, based upon the working group's feedback, we could then execute the work order for HNTV to move forward on that. The second one is, even though the environmental clearances are nearly complete, clearly the treaty process is taking a lot longer than we anticipated. So there's additional budget identified in amendment number 2 to ramp up resources into the treaty one-on-one meetings and really engaging the tribes directly. And so there has been some more additional specialty legal contracts to review the initial contract. And so it just that's an area that we feel like there's a need to beef up the budget on. And then third is the feedback that the project received from the U.S. Department of Transportation, that the project should engage the TIFIA program, and that is a pretty extensive process. And so this amendment number 2 ramps up quite a bit of budget capacity for the technical development of the TIFIA, if not the application itself, certainly preparing pre-application and ongoing communication with TIFIA folks back in DC. So those are the primary areas, and I don't know if you want to add some.
Just two other things I would add. One is, it also includes bringing storyboards on as part of that communications team, which allows us to have the video options to use storyboards if needed. And then also bringing PFM on, which is a financial team. We took that out of our scope and budget and moved it over to PFM. And we're bringing them on as a sub to support carry on those detailed financial pieces that need to happen as far as tolling and TIFIA and those components. It also brings them on.
I think there's an add-on there for
FCS.
benefit and also
Yes,
for benefit.
I'm sorry, yes, and for benefit cost analysis for FCS, who's done the previous PCAs for the grant applications, for them to be able to come on and update those PCAs for the new grant applications.
Which is what we heard in DC. That's pretty important.
And there's been a couple little changes to what they want to see in there, so. And this group, the group that we're bringing on is the group that's done all the previous ones, so they're very familiar with all the BCAs for the board.
So, so what we used is ARUP. ARUP does the third-party peer review. I believe we had 3 or 4 meetings. Mike and I with ARUP, and then we kind of worked back to HGTV and had a feedback to either correct the numbers or add more explanation for the hours that ARUP thought were either high or low. And so I can go through that matrix with you, but I think they had 3 or 4 pages up there, but between us working and
Yeah, as we went back and forth
HGTV were able to
3 or
reconcile.
4 times during this effort, at the end of the day, the letter that they wrote us, which I think is in the package, says that they feel it's fair and reasonable for the scope of work that we're committing them to on amendment number 2. Again, the way I see this is not a lump sum cost. It's an estimate. It's going to be what it's going to be, but it cannot exceed this because we're talking about funding. And I think some of this could very easily flow into next year as well. So I would recommend that we say yes to it.
If there's any other, I mean, I don't know if there's anything more that I can add other than what's in the packet. I think the other thing too is that all of these things are going to be based upon further direction from the working group.
Right.
That actually gets the work started.
Right. So there'll be an interchange as we move forward.
So based upon that, staff is certainly recommending that this get moved forward. So typically what we do in this situation is we do have a Port Commission meeting tomorrow, and it's always helpful if the bi-state working group can make a recommendation that I can pass on, or Commissioner Fox can pass on to the Port Commission. So certainly would like
Yeah,
to.
frankly, I wouldn't bring it forward if we don't have consensus.
Yeah.
Right, it doesn't seem like there's a choice.
I was gonna say, are there any questions after reviewing it from either of the mayors?
No questions.
Okay, Paul, you're good?
I'm good.
Okay,
I'm also good.
okay. Paul, do you want to weigh in, or do you want to kind of hold back a little bit? Which is understandable.
There's just layers upon layers of chapters that I don't understand yet.
Yeah, and that's fair, and that's fair. How about you, Arthur?
I'm good.
Okay,
I'm good with it.
okay, you're good. I'm good. So we've got
Consensus.
5-4. We'll call it a consensus with one non-vote yet. Okay? Okay, let's go to the next one.
All right, that was the last thing that we had, the ODOT folks were not able to get on.
Okay,
So what I'll do is coordinate with them to have them here at the
Next year.
23rd meeting.
okay.
We do have a meeting with them on Friday, to go through, like I said, what our, proposal is on how they can move forward with the BO. I'll send out a summary of that meeting. If there's any major issues with that, then we can get together as needed before the 23rd, or do it through email and.
One suggestion to you, Mike, subtly, and we're not trying to be threatening on it. But if you show them the first page of the package, let them know that we're actually watching the commitments and how they're slipping.
They are very much aware that we are very interested in getting this done.
Good.
And it's been encouraging actually the last couple of weeks, because Carol actually reached out and set up a couple meetings. Carol works for ODOT to actually engage us and keep things moving. So they've been a little more proactive than maybe I would say in the past. So I think we're definitely getting the message that this is a big priority for the region, and that we're wanting to move this project forward quickly.
Have we gotten any indication that Wyden or anybody from our trip made a phone call?
I have not heard from anybody that they either did or from ODOT that they received that.
We didn't request them to do that, did we?
They offered to.
They offered and.
Right.
and,
Three of them offered to.
But I thought that, what's another discussion that might cause more
Yeah.
problems than.
Yeah, we did not make a request from anybody to do that, but three of them offered while we were there to follow up. I have not heard.
Other items for the meeting?
We do not have anything.
Okay. Open items. Anybody want to bring anything up? Jake?
Nah.
No? Arthur?
Nope.
Paul, anything that you'd like to talk about?
Nothing at this time, thank you.
Okay, Catherine
Nope.
and Marla.
I'm good.
Okay,
The only thing I would say is just a reminder that we are going to be on a 2-week schedule, so we will be meeting more often. The next meeting is the 23rd. I guess it's 2-week, roughly 2-week schedule, I think it's twice a month. To just be aware of that, and if there's if there's not agenda items and we don't have things to push forward, then we'll cancel them as we need, but right now the placeholder is to meet twice a month.
well, I can kind of see for at least the next couple of meetings, we got plenty to talk about.
Absolutely.
The other thing that maybe we consider, and we don't decide today, but think about it. Do you want to have one of these meetings over in Washington? And Mayor Kiefler, maybe at your place, at City Hall one time, or,
For everybody's, but we can't do that, can we?
or we could go to her house.
No, I'm talking about everybody's, the pub,
Yeah.
great place for a meeting.
Anyway, think about it. If we want to do it, let's bring it up next week and figure out how to get it done.
I don't see a reason and rationale why there's not a lot of public that shows up. There's not gonna be a lot of public that probably shows up until we do something really wrong. We've got this microphone system works great here, and it's just across the bridge.
Fine with me, but thought we'd offer.
Yeah, I agree with Jake. I think, maybe the opportunity for like open houses or casual moments to connect with people with bridge updates is probably more of interest to me than moving this meeting, which I think runs pretty efficiently either in person or for the people that Zoom in. Like Jake said, we don't see a lot of public attendance or engagement at these meetings, so.
Sounds good.
All
I'm
right.
gonna change it.
With that, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
It's already tasting the sweet potato fries.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
You can always, yeah, okay, yeah.